How many times have you or someone around you been talking about an evergreen conifer that looks something like this, or this, or this, and simply called it a pine tree? Or maybe you just throw up your arms and say, they all look the same to me. Chances are good that you might have subjected your tree to a personal identity crisis. Well, sorting out these three genera of conifers, all in the pine family, is a lot easier once you know what to look for. It all boils down to just three things: needle attachment, terminal bud characteristics, and angle of the cones. First, we'll look at needle attachment. The pines are the easiest to distinguish here. Pluck off a needle and you'll actually get 2 or 5 or sometimes 3. That's because pines bear their needles in small clusters called fascicles. One of the most important distinctions to make when trying to separate one pine species from another is the number of needles per fascicle. Austrian pine, shown in the upper photo, will reliably bear 2 needles per fascicle, so we refer to this as a 2-needle pine. The familiar white pine, bottom photo, is a 5-needle pine because, you guessed it, it bears 5 needles per fascicle. What about fir and spruce? Well, these both bear their needles singly. Pluck off a needle and you're only going to get 1. But if you have just the right touch, when you pull the needle off a fir, you will see a little round pad that looks like a suction cup. On a spruce, though, you're actually going to see a little sliver of bark attached to the needle. That's right, pluck a needle from the spruce and you're actually tearing the tree's bark. Maybe that's why those prickly picea bite back, because they're the sharpest conifers of the trio. Another way to separate fir from spruce, with just a few notable exceptions, is that needles on fir are 2-sided in cross-section, whereas spruce are 4-sided. That means the spruce needles will roll in your fingers, albeit like caveman wheels, but the fir needle won't budge. Now let's look at the terminal buds. These are located at the very tip of each stem. Pine buds are generally the biggest and most conspicuous. They're pretty plump with really loose, flappy scales. Pines will only have buds at the very tip of the stems. You won't find them anywhere along the length of the stems. Again, it's the fir and spruce we need to look at a little more closely. Fir buds are sealed with resin, which makes it difficult to discern many bud scales. On the other hand, spruce buds look dry and papery, almost like mini dried rose flowers. Both fir and spruce will produce buds at the tip and along their younger twigs. And finally, we get to cones. If you catch an older tree at the right time of year, cones can be a dead giveaway. Since pines only produce buds from the tips of stems, all their growth, including their cones, radiates out from the stems in whorls. You may find 1, 2, 3, or even more cones attached at the same point, where other twigs are also attached to the main branch. Some pines hold their cones for many years, while others only hold them for a year or so. Japanese white pine is notable because it can hold its cones for 15 years, or maybe even longer. You will only see fir cones from summer until late fall. They stand upwards along the stems, and by winter, they disintegrate to release their seeds. So all that's left going through winter is the central woody stalk. By contrast, spruce cones hang downwards and do not disintegrate. That means you can still enjoy them hanging from your tree all winter long. There, you're almost a pro. Now, if you're really pining fir spruce, then all that's left to do is go out and practice separating these 3 important groups of conifers. If you happen to live near ISU's campus, then a great place to see all 3 planted close together is the south end of the quad in the lawn just north of the Center for Visual Arts, or CVA building. You'll find a really tall concolor fir that has the blue-green needles beside an equally tall Norway spruce. Then in their shadow, you'll find a small but cheery little Japanese white pine that's just getting its start. Make sure to inspect the needles, buds, and cones on all 3 for yourself while you're up close.